Incredible Single Dad's touching act in the rain leads to a surprising job-saving revelation. Jack stared into the dismal afternoon sky, knowing that life as a single dad had become more turbulent than the brewing storm overhead. His heart raced with anxiety as he stood outside the school, waiting for Mia. The thought of potential layoffs at the clinic consumed him like a relentless tide. As a medical technician, providing for Mia was his lifeline. He couldn't afford to lose that. He tightened his grip on the umbrella, fighting to dispel the worry etched on his brow. When he finally spotted her, bounding out with a smile that radiated more light than the sun hidden by clouds, he felt momentarily buoyed. She rushed to him, her laughter cutting through the heavy fog of his mind. But not for long. The first raindrops began to patter down around them, but instead of hurrying home as they usually did, curiosity pulled them toward a vibrant mural in progress on an old brick wall. Jack watched as the artist struggled with the brush, rain spattering against the colors, the scene stark against the grayness of the day. He felt a raw surge of recognition. The artist had once been a beacon of hope in town, a vision of success before life's derailments. Jack's chest tightened, anger and empathy colliding inside him. Could this man see the potential within himself anymore? "Dad, look, it's so pretty," Mia gestured, her eyes wide with wonder. Jack turned to face her, grappling with his own discontent. Here she stood, filled with joy amidst the storm, but deep down he wrestled with the creeping fear that his own happiness hinged precariously on each decision he made. What would happen if he lost his job? Would he still manage to give Mia the life she deserved? "Yeah, it really is, honey," he managed to reply, but the words felt hollow. The mural now represented everything that was slipping away from him, color fighting against a world increasingly dulled by financial fear. With a heavy sigh, he approached the artist, sharing warm recollections of their past. The man, despite his stained past with addiction, sparked something in Jack he hadn't felt in years. They began to discuss a vision of art therapy at the clinic, a notion that ignited a long-dormant passion within Jack. How beautiful it would be to marry creativity with healing, to bring light to the dreary days of his patients. However, the optimism quickly darkened as he remembered the corporate bosses who only saw numbers, not dreams. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from.
I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The internal debate raged inside him. Advocating for his patient's needs while risking his job felt like a high-stakes gamble. The thunder rumbled in the distance, reminding him of the vast uncertainty that loomed over his life. He felt like he was standing at a crossroads, torn between his desires and fears. What would it mean for Mia if he failed to convince his superiors? Would they spiral deeper into a world where creativity was discarded as an indulgence? His breathing quickened, and he clenched the umbrella harder, shifting to block the aggressive rain. Mia's face looked up at him, innocent yet knowing. She could sense his struggle, the weight of decisions that threatened to crush his spirit. The mural stood before him, a vivid testament to the resilience of hope. He needed to step into that storm, voice his vision, and risk it all. And yet doubt clung to his thoughts like the rain, almost suffocating. Could he truly take a stand for art in a system that only valued profit? With a swirling knot of frustration in his stomach, Jack faced the clinic's door, knowing he had to summon the courage to fight for what he believed could save not just his job, but their future. Jack stepped into the clinic, the sound of the rain fading behind him, swallowed by the sterile environment he had known for years. A familiar scent of antiseptic hung heavily in the air, stinging his nose. He felt like a stranger in this place, the weight of his aspirations pressing down on him. As he moved through the sterile walls adorned with motivational posters that felt more like platitudes than truth, he grasped at the threads of a nebulous idea that had sparked during his conversation with the artist. Art therapy. It wasn't just a whimsical thought, it was a lifeline. He envisioned patients, weary and anxious, finding solace in strokes of paint and expressions of creativity. But could he transmute that vision into reality? In a world where metrics were king, where every decision was scrutinized for profit margins, could he convince others of its value? He approached the break room and found a couple of colleagues gathered around the table, engaged in light banter. Their laughter felt alien, a reminder of joys he wished he could share freely.
The casual way they tossed around ideas about patients struck him as superficial, devoid of the deeper connections he craved to foster in his line of work. "Hey, Jack, you joining us?" one of them asked, waving him over with a relaxed smile. "Just thinking," he replied, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The conversation turned back to mundane matters, and he felt himself slipping away again, adrift in uncharted waters. Not prepared to indulge in idle chatter, his thoughts turned fervent, questioning everything he had come to accept in this establishment.
He paced to the window, watching the rain streak against the glass like tears. An inner monologue thrummed inside his head. Should he approach management about art therapy? Would they mock his idea? The image of Mia's face, brightened by wonder and joy, flashed through his mind. She believed in possibilities. Maybe he could champion that belief here. With newfound resolve, Jack took out his phone, fingers poised over the screen. He hesitated, breathing through the uncertainty that coated his thoughts. Fear danced around him, whispering all the reasons it wouldn't work, but he pushed against it. After all, his heart demanded action, not complacency. He connected with the artist through a rapid text, proposing a meeting later in the day to gather ideas and strategize. It was impulsive, even reckless, but something about it felt right. It was the first tangible move he'd made towards translating his aspirations into action. Then, as the hours dragged on, the anticipation tugged at him, turning his anxiety into electricity. He practiced his pitch silently, crafting and honing his words with every step around the clinic. "Imagine," he would start, "then paint a picture of creativity for healing, of patients rediscovering themselves through art." But doubt lingered in the corners of his mind. Would they see it as beneficial, or would they dismiss it entirely? Determined to break free from self-doubt, he clutched the corners of his folder like armor, ready to protect his passion. The meeting was in 30 minutes, and the tension knotted his stomach. Yet as he journeyed toward the conference room where management awaited him, he considered a transformative truth. This wasn't merely about convincing others. It was about embracing the struggle and understanding the invaluable lessons it could teach him. As he pushed the door open, a flood of energy washed over him, and for the first time, he recognized the strength in vulnerability. The moment had come to face not just the challenge of convincing them, but the deeper confrontation with himself, his fears, his desires, and the flickering hope that this could be more than just a dream. Jack inhaled deeply, stepping into a room filled with expectations, both his own and those of others. The moment of truth had arrived. The conference room was stark and bright, the fluorescent lights buzzing softly overhead, casting a harsh glow on the polished table where several faces awaited. Jack's heart raced, his pulse thundering in his ears as he navigated the terrain of his anxiety. Each colleague bore their own expressions, curiosity mixed with skepticism, but it was his own inner voice that drowned out the noise, urging him to follow through on this venture he dared to dream. "Thanks for coming in, Jack," said Marta, the head administrator, breaking the ice. Her tone was welcoming, laced with the professionalism that carried the weight of the institution behind it. "You requested this time to discuss something new?" "Yeah," he managed to reply, flicking his gaze to the floor before gathering courage to meet their eyes. The room felt constrictive, as if the walls were closing in on him with every heartbeat. "I've been thinking about integrating art therapy into our treatment programs." A murmur of surprise rumbled through a few of the attendees. He sensed their immediate judgment, the skepticism of a realm they held dear to their metrics-driven methodologies. Jack took a breath, feeling a swell of determination. He thrust forward, recounting his vision with a fervor he hadn't expected to possess. He painted stories of hopeful patients, tracing brushstrokes on canvas, expressing emotions hidden by illness, unraveling the threads of their struggles. "Imagine a patient expressing grief through colors rather than words," he proposed, watching as their eyebrows lifted ever so slightly. "Art creates a safe space for emotions we might otherwise overlook. It taps into our humanity." He spoke with a conviction that surprised even himself. Each word was laced with a blend of desperation and passion, the kind that could spark either laughter or reverence. Yet doubt tinged his thoughts. Had he overshot? Had he gotten too carried away? "Jack, this is different," interjected Eric, a senior therapist whose opinion Jack revered. His brows furrowed, creating a divide between acceptance and critique. "But how will you measure its impact? What statistics support this?" That question sliced through him like a knife, woes washing over him in an avalanche of helplessness. He felt the urge to retreat, to flee to the safety of his mundane day-to-day tasks. But then he remembered Mia's animated expression, how alive she had been when she discussed her own art.
Statistics may not tell the full story, Jack fired back, emboldened by the memory, but that doesn't mitigate the need for healing through creative expression. People need more than just figures. They need connection. They need hope. Silence filled the air as the weight of his words settled among them, and for the first time he caught hints of intrigue flickering in their eyes. A realization blossomed in him. It wasn't solely about convincing them. It was about asserting his belief in healing, and perhaps more importantly, asserting his desire for change within himself. Marta leaned forward, fingers steepled as she assessed him. What if we organized a pilot program, a small group for a limited time to gauge its success? Hope surged within him, a fresh wave of possibility. I'd love that. I want to create something tangible, a foundation. The collaborative spirit shifted the atmosphere, and Jack seized upon it. They began brainstorming, exploring themes, techniques, and potential partnerships. Each idea bounced back and forth, an energy building between them.
As he contributed, sharing his thoughts, he no longer felt like the outsider, but a vital participant in a transformative process. Before long, their conversation shifted toward logistics, and Jack felt himself riding a rising tide of excitement. It was exhilarating, full of unknowns, yet promising depths to uncover. An ephemeral breath of lightness replaced the earlier tension. As the meeting concluded, exhilaration coursed through Jack. He had ventured into the unknown and returned not only intact, but emboldened. However, a gnawing question lingered at the edges of his mind. Could this newfound confidence withstand the inevitable pushback that lay ahead? It was a step forward, but challenges would soon come knocking at his door. The world beyond this briefing room was not yet ready to embrace the vulnerability he had uncovered, and he could feel the burgeoning storm building just beyond the horizon. Jack left the conference room with a sense of purpose, but still acutely aware that his journey was far from over. His aspirations had merely crossed the threshold into reality. But what awaited in the days to come? In the depths of success, would he maintain the resolve to stand strong against adversity? As the days unfolded following the conference meeting, Jack plunged headfirst into the work required for launching the pilot program. He felt a duality within him. Excitement thrived alongside a gnawing fear of failure. Each morning brought renewed vigor, but also an underlying tension. His mind raced with thoughts of patient selection, art supplies, and potential resistance from colleagues or administration. He spent hours poring over research, desperately searching for studies that might support his approach, looking for any shred of evidence to bury within his proposal. But as he combed through the data, he couldn't help but feel a deeper call to this endeavor. The numbers alone wouldn't encapsulate the emotional breakthroughs he envisioned. Instead, his motivation shifted. He was beginning to realize that statistics served merely as scaffolding for a structure built on human connection. Jack decided to formulate a plan. He created a detailed outline, assigning roles and responsibilities, defining objectives and outcomes for the program. With each bullet point crafted, he felt more grounded. His confidence built with the notion that he was taking actionable steps toward tangible change, however small. However, it wasn't just the preparation that spurred his development. It was his interactions with the small group of colleagues who embraced the concept. Sarah, an art instructor, brought a refreshing perspective, intertwining creative techniques with therapy methodologies. Her enthusiasm reignited Jack's passion on days when self-doubt loomed large. She would share personal stories about transformative moments her students had experienced in an art-focused environment, igniting Jack's curiosity about the potential parallels to their patient work. Yet, the looming question Eric had posed echoed in the back of his mind. How would he measure the program's success? The weight of projected skepticism from the administrative side sparked a self-reflective spiral. What if this endeavor was just a glorified art class masked as therapy? Amidst these swirling thoughts, Jack gathered his courage to confront Eric directly. It was time to address the skepticism that shadowed his ambitions. Jack found Eric in the break room late one afternoon. "Can we talk?" he asked, forcing an air of confidence he didn't feel. "Sure, Jack," Eric replied, cautious yet open. "I've been thinking about our earlier discussion. You raised a valid point about metrics and success. I want to do this right, but I need your guidance." Eric frowned thoughtfully. "Okay," he said slowly. "It's important to have a framework for understanding the impact of something new, especially art therapy." Jack leaned in, feeling the weight of vulnerability as he expressed his fears. "That's exactly why I want you involved. I believe this can work, but I can't ignore the doubts. I hope to not only prove the value of the program, but also inspire others to think beyond the metrics." Eric studied him, his eyes searching for sincerity. "That's a good start, but you'll need to present evidence over time. Changes in mood, engagement levels, and patient feedback. It'll be essential to have both qualitative and quantitative data." This conversation became a turning point. The intensity of their discourse ignited a sense of urgency within Jack. He was learning to articulate his vision, transforming his initial uncertainties into proactive steps. Fueled by the intent to integrate both creativity and data, he decided to plan a mechanism for feedback before the first session even began.
Weeks passed, and as the pilot program date approached, Jack faced fresh challenges. Critique surfaced. The administration questioned not only the timing, but also resources and safety protocols for patient engagement in art activities. It felt like a tightening vice against his aspirations. But in response, Jack tapped into the resilience burgeoning within him. He envisioned how the pilot could redefine therapeutic boundaries if given the chance to flourish. With each brushstroke of doubt, he became increasingly motivated to paint a path of possibility through adversity. All he needed was one solid push to move forward. Feeling emboldened, he gathered the team for a strategy session. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. This was their opportunity to set forth their vision. Jack stood at the forefront, ready to lead them through the tempestuous waters ahead. But what winds would challenge his resolve in the coming storm? The air was thick with tension as Jack stepped into the small conference room. The faces of his colleagues were a mixture of excitement and apprehension, mirroring his own conflicted emotions.
He knew that leading the strategy session meant standing at the edge of a precipice, but he felt the ground beneath him solidifying as he prepared to share his ideas. "Thank you all for coming," Jack began, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "I know we faced a lot of skepticism, but I believe we can build something transformative with this pilot program." He felt the familiar wave of doubt ripple through him, but he shoved it aside, focusing on the palpable energy in the room. Sarah smiled encouragingly, her enthusiasm lighting a small fire of courage in his chest. It was in moments like this that Jack recognized the strength in collaboration, the way their shared determination could supersede individual insecurities. Jack outlined their objectives, 5 key areas of focus for the pilot: patient engagement, emotional response, teamwork, therapeutic outcomes, and safety protocols. With each point, he watched his colleagues nod, absorbing the vision he had cultivated over many sleepless nights. As he spoke, he felt his shift within himself. It was no longer just an idea to bring to life. It was a mission that resonated deeply with who he was as a professional. "Success isn't merely about numbers," he said, catching Eric's eye across the table. "It's about connection. It's about reaching our patients on a level that transforms their experience." There was a momentary silence, the weight of his conviction hanging in the air. "To do that, we need to ensure safety is at the forefront," Jack continued, addressing the concerns voiced by administration. "Art can be messy, but it should never compromise our patients' well-being. We need protocols that allow for creative freedom while ensuring protection." He glanced over notes he had prepared, statistics and case studies that supported this direction. "We will gather feedback not just from metrics, but from the experiences of those we serve." The room erupted with discussion. Colleagues shared ideas and brainstormed solutions, pushing Jack's initial framework into unexplored territories. He felt exhilaration as they delved deeper, his pulse quickening as suggestions poured in to enhance patient assessment methods and session feedback mechanisms. But then Eric raised a finger, slowing the momentum. "I appreciate the creativity here, but what safeguards will we implement for the emotional safety of our patients? This is art, but it can also unearth difficult feelings." The question cut through the excitement, revealing the fissures in Jack's preparedness. Jack inhaled sharply. He had anticipated resistance, yet faced with the reality of Eric's concern, he felt the ground shift again, this time beneath his confidence. "We'll integrate pre-session assessments and establish a clear feedback loop for patients to express their comfort levels," Jack proposed, struggling to maintain clarity through the growing uncertainty. "All sessions will have trained facilitators who understand trauma-informed care." As he spoke, a realization sparked. He had to clarify his vision, not only to address concerns, but also to solidify his own understanding. He recognized the importance of boundaries. Just as art could be cathartic, it could also be overwhelming. This insight was crucial, knowing that diligent support was necessary for the creative process to thrive. "Let's ensure we're equipped to handle whatever may arise, emotionally and creatively," he added, feeling the vibrations of new determination coursing through him. With ideas circulating, Jack's confidence began to rise again. By embracing vulnerability around potential pitfalls, he built a more solid foundation for both his colleagues and himself. It wasn't about perfection, it was about progress. As the session wrapped up and excitement filled the air, Jack felt a sense of purpose wash over him. Facing doubt not only sharpened his vision, but opened pathways for deeper collaboration. It was a revelation he hadn't anticipated, but desperately needed. Yet, as he left the meeting, an unsettling thought nagged at him. Would their shared ambition withstand the scrutiny of the administration? His heart raced with the weight of impending evaluations, making him wonder if the barriers would prove too high to climb. In the next meeting with the administration, Jack would not only have to defend his pilot program, but potentially confront his escalating fears head-on. Would he be ready to navigate through their skepticism and protect the transformative vision he had barely begun to shape? The fluorescent lights in the hallway flickered as Jack made his way to the administrative boardroom. Each step echoed his internal turmoil, a melody of anticipation and apprehension. The weight of the meeting ahead loomed over him like a storm cloud, ready to unleash the torrential doubts he had worked so hard to stave off. Would his vision translate successfully to those who wielded the power to approve or deny his pilot program? As he entered the room, he noticed a polished table surrounded by stoic faces, each member of the administration reflecting a sea of skepticism. Their demeanor was formal, scrutinizing, devoid of the collaborative warmth he had felt just hours earlier with his colleagues. It was as if an invisible barrier separated their world from his, and he felt an involuntary shiver of insecurity race down his spine. "Jack, thank you for being here today," Mary, the head of administration, said, her tone even, imparting no hints regarding her thoughts. "Let's discuss your proposal." Taking a deep breath, Jack gathered himself. "Thank you for the opportunity. I believe this pilot program encapsulates not just a project, but a revolutionary approach to patient care through the arts." His voice carried an edge of passion weaving through the air, but he felt the tension refract back, sharp and unforgiving.
"While we admire your enthusiasm," a board member interrupted, "we need to know how you plan to measure success beyond anecdotal evidence. The arts can be subjective." The question landed heavily, echoing Eric's earlier concerns in a sharper, more critical light. Jack fought the rising panic, grasping for clarity. "Success will be measured through both qualitative feedback and empirical metrics. We'll conduct ongoing assessments to ensure we're achieving our objectives." Pushing back against doubt, he emphasized the importance of emotional connection and the intervention's potential to foster growth. But as he spoke, Jack's words felt like sand slipping through his fingers. The board members exchanged glances, their skepticism palpable. One board member, Tom, leaned forward. "Jack, while we appreciate your commitment to emotional safety, the fact remains, we cannot endorse a program that lacks clear, quantifiable objectives. This could set a precedent for misguided spending." The sting of his words cut deeper than Jack anticipated. Here he was, standing at a crossroads, his transformative vision challenged by a corporate mindset focused on numbers, far removed from the emotional undertone of his mission. He faltered. A small part of him wanted to retreat, to argue back, but he couldn't afford that. Could he pivot his argument without sacrificing his principles? Jack felt a hum of defiance invigorate him. Perhaps there isn't a single metric that captures the essence of human experience, but we can use blended metrics to tell a fuller story. Think about the patient testimonials, case studies, and emotional assessments that provide context. We can implement rigorous follow-ups and adjustment strategies. Recognition sparked among a few members of the board, but skepticism still hovered. They needed more. Jack sensed a critical decision point coming, one that would showcase his capacity for resilience. He mentally recalibrated, deciding it was time for vulnerability. "Look, I understand that this initiative is ambiguous, but that's precisely what makes it necessary. The aim isn't solely success in numbers, it's about creating a space for healing. We can't measure the power of connection on a spreadsheet, it defines our humanity." As his words hung in the air, a flicker of understanding passed over Mary's face. Maybe he could not meet their expectations entirely, but his persistence might resonate with their underlying values. Jack straightened, determined to leave no room for retreat. Did he have what it took to push through the noise? Could he find a balance between their expectations and the transformative spirit he envisioned? With a fractured silence surrounding them, Jack felt tension shift. The atmosphere thickened, pregnant with possibility and the unresolved. Suddenly, he found himself at another precipice. Could his decision to be vulnerability lead to their acceptance or deeper scrutiny?
The stakes had never been higher. The outcome hung in the air like unresolved chords waiting for resolution. Would he find a way through, or would he face their judgment and lose sight of everything he had fought to build? The silence in the boardroom felt labyrinthine, enclosing Jack in a surreal bubble of uncertainty and determination. The air pulsed with the weight of anticipation, each second stretching longer than the last as he awaited their response. His mind raced, processing every slight movement, every flicker of emotion that crossed the board members' faces. Then it happened. Mary cleared her throat, breaking the tension like a thin thread. "Jack, your passion is evident, but we need a plan that aligns with our principles and metrics." Her expression softened ever so slightly, a hint of recognition of the uphill battle he faced. Her words embodied the duality of encouragement and caution, further igniting Jack's resolve. In that moment, a powerful realization washed over him. This wasn't just about the board. This was a reflection of himself, of his growth journey. He had spent years nurturing his understanding of the intricate bond between art and emotional health. It was time to embrace that knowledge and let it guide his next steps. "Perhaps I have approached this from the wrong angle," Jack began, shifting gears. "Let's explore how we can integrate both qualitative and quantitative assessments together. For example, we could initiate project workshops that allow us to observe patient interactions with arts-based therapies. This could provide qualitative data while fostering engagement and ownership among the patients." He could see some nodding, minds tentatively opening in response to his pivot. Fueled by the moment, Jack dove deeper. From those workshops, we could gather direct feedback through focus groups, ensuring that patients feel involved in the evaluation process. They would share what resonates with them, thus humanizing the metrics we gather. Each suggestion felt like a calculated stroke, replacing the ambiguity with structure, and he could see the board members begin to engage. Tom shifted back in his chair, seemingly reconsidering. "And how do you propose we ensure this remains feasible within our budget constraints?" "Great question," Jack replied, aware that he was taking a bold stand. "I believe we can initiate this pilot with a modest budget, attracting grants and possibly local partnerships to supplement funding. By outlining a clear phased rollout, we create scales to monitor outcomes and reassess our approach continuously." As he spoke, he managed not just to defend his idea but also to evolve it, transforming it from a solitary grand vision into a mutually inclusive plan. The boardroom, once imposing, now felt like a canvas awaiting the final strokes of paint. Yet beneath the surface of rising confidence, doubt still nagged.
His heart raced with the fear of overpromising, of crashing down after ascending. But then, in an unexpected realization, he recognized something deeper. This was his opportunity not only to advocate for his project, but to solidify his identity as a leader in this field. Jack turned his focus inward, understanding that his growth was intrinsically tied to the people he aimed to serve. He could lead from a place of vulnerability, transforming challenges into stepping stones rather than barriers. The meaning of success slowly morphed in his mind. It was about empowerment, connection, and transformation, which transcended mere numbers. He finished with renewed clarity. "Ultimately, my aim is to cultivate an environment that supports healing, where each interaction is a vital piece of a larger narrative. I'm committed to iterating our approach based on real-time experiences, ensuring we aren't just measuring outcomes, but understanding the stories behind them." The boardroom buzzed quietly, conversations threading between board members, weighing his ideas against their frameworks. Jack's heart beat in syncopation with the tides shifting around him, a tempest of potential mingling with a fragile hope. Had he navigated his way closer to acceptance, or stirred the pot of skepticism even further? The duality of his desires tangled in a complex dance. His need for validation wrestled with his deeper commitment to the transformative power of his vision. As the members re-engaged their stoic demeanor, Jack felt a flicker of deeper tension rise. It was now or never. Would one final question emerge to challenge him, or would the path ahead bear the weight of possibility? The door was creaking open towards acceptance or conflict. What lay beyond that threshold remained painfully unclear, yet undeniably urgent, and Jack sensed that this moment was far from over. The atmosphere in the boardroom began to shift, a charged dynamic surrounding Jack, as whispers of curiosity and doubt began to wax and wane among the board members. He felt like a tightrope walker teetering over a chasm of expectations. The sense of urgency pressed against him, each visual cue from the board members an invitation, or a challenge, to refine his presentation further. Before he could gather his thoughts, Mary leaned forward, her brow furrowing slightly. "Jack," she said, her voice steady but probing, "could you elaborate on how this approach addresses the measurable outcomes we're looking for? Our funding largely depends on demonstrable results." Jack took a steadying breath, aware of what this moment meant. This was the initiation of a robust dialogue, one that he had long craved yet feared. "Absolutely, Mary. Here's my thought process." He straightened himself, anchoring his resolve. By intertwining qualitative data from patient workshops with quantitative assessments, like recovery metrics or patient satisfaction scores, we can create a more holistic evaluation framework. If our workshops yield rich thematic feedback, that can not only supplement but enhance the numerical data we gather. As he spoke, he noticed a semblance of hope flickering in some of the board members' expressions. However, a deeper realization dawned upon him. Every additional layer he added could also invite more skepticism. He was not merely defending an idea. He was digging deeper into territory steeped in professional expectations and personal fears. Just then, Tom interjected, "And have you thought about the potential competitor response? If we implement this model, we could risk drawing attention from other organizations. Jack felt a pang in his gut. Tom's words resonated with an unspoken anxiety that had crossed his mind. That's a valid point, he acknowledged, grappling with the understanding that every innovation invited scrutiny. But every unique approach we take could highlight our distinct value proposition. If we set ourselves apart in our methodology, it might inspire patients and partners to rally behind us and the vision we are cultivating. As he finished, it struck him that his path forward was not only driven by the desire to succeed, but by the undeniable necessity to continually invite dialogue, confrontation if needed, instead of fearing it. It shifted his perspective from trying to convince them of his ideas to seeing each question as an opportunity for collaboration. But the intensity of the moment hung heavily in the air, and as he scanned the room, internal doubt crept in once again. What if he was diluting his vision to fit their molds? Weren't there always going to be those who doubted, no matter how thoroughly he presented his ideas? The clock in the room ticked loudly, amplifying Jack's inner turmoil. Even if he managed to sway the board now, what would happen when the reality of implementation set in? How far was he willing to stretch his vision to gain acceptance? The gnawing questions threatened to unravel his confidence further. Yet, amidst the storm of uncertainty, he realized that these challenges, while daunting, were essential. Navigating through this crucible of doubt would not only test his resolve, it could redefine his capacity as a leader. With a newfound clarity, he rested his palms on the table and leaned slightly forward. I recognize the fear of competition and skepticism, but I also see this as an opportunity for us to stand up for a progressive model that showcases our commitment to genuine care. This is about healing, but it's also about demonstrating that we're pioneering in spaces that matter deeply. The weight of his words felt heavy, yet liberating. Jack understood that his battle was not just for acceptance from the board members, but also an internal struggle to assert his identity both as a visionary and as an advocate for vulnerable individuals. Did they see that he was willing to put his heart on the line?
Just as he opened his mouth to further articulate his thoughts, the sound of a chair scraping across the floor caught everyone off guard. Clara, the quietest board member, suddenly stood. "Jack, I've been listening closely. I think you're onto something with this approach, but how do you envision overcoming the potential backlash if this doesn't go as planned?" The question hit him like a splash of cold water, suddenly bringing to light the fears he had buried under layers of enthusiasm. What if this forward-thinking plan failed? Jack's resolve hardened. He was faced with a pivotal crossroads. Would he embrace the fear of failure and use it as a catalyst for growth, or allow it to hinder his progress? In that pivotal moment, amidst an uncertain future, Jack stood at the precipice of his own development, prepared to address the questions both from the board and within himself. "In every challenge, there lies opportunity for growth," he began, feeling the weight of each word. "I'm ready to engage and lead. Are you?" The room fell silent again, tension electric, as each board member registered his commitment, waiting for an unspoken verdict on a choice that could change everything. What would their decision be, and could Jack truly be ready to face the deeper, more personal stakes that lay ahead? The silence was deafening, suffocating even. Jack's heart raced as he stood at the crossroads of self-doubt and determination, each second stretching into an eternity. The board members exchanged glances. He could almost hear the wheels turning in their minds. It was now or never. Slowly, Mary broke the silence. "Jack, you know that we value innovation, but you need to understand the stakes. If this fails, it could set us back significantly. We're all invested in this company's future." Her concern was palpable, yet a challenge resided within her tone. Investment, Jack mulled over the word. This wasn't just about funds or resources. It was a commitment that echoed far beyond spreadsheets and metrics. How could he articulate this without succumbing to the weight of their skepticism? "I appreciate your honesty, Mary. Our intent is not just to innovate for the sake of it. We're here to create something of lasting impact." Beside him, Tom leaned back, arms crossed. A smirk was plastered on his face, as if he couldn't wait to poke more holes in Jack's plan. Lasting impact sounds noble, but can it really stand up against the realities we face? No one wins by simply wishing for success. Jack felt the heat of their glares, but he recalled moments in past projects where doubt stirred but led to breakthroughs. True, he acknowledged, but every innovation carries risk. The real question is, are we willing to adapt when things don't go as planned? He paused, letting the idea linger in the air. What if we launch this model in phases, allowing us to adjust as we gather data? We could pivot if necessary. What does that even mean? Tom leaned in.
You'd jeopardize our reputation with half-baked results, and who's to say we'll even want to backtrack? Jack felt the anxiety rise, but he steadied his breath. This was his moment. I'm not suggesting we backtrack. I'm urging us to embrace an iterative process. If we build our strategy around testing and feedback, we empower ourselves to learn, grow, and embody resilience. Across the room, Clara looked contemplative. Jack, the idea of flexibility is intriguing, but how do we ensure we won't lose sight of the bigger picture during all this testing? The questions kept coming, forcing Jack to dig deeper into his convictions. He had crafted his vision based on core values. This was more than just ideas on paper. It starts from the why. We commit to our mission in every phase, grounding our approach in our fundamental purpose, to enhance care and foster genuine relationships. As Jack spoke, he started to connect dots, weaving his narrative between numbers and human emotions. Every word was a small act of reclamation, of promoting not just an idea, but a deeper understanding of what collective healing meant. Mary's eyes brightened. So you'd propose a layered implementation that embraces the essence of our mission while still being adaptable? That's a compelling approach. The tension in the room seemed to dissipate just slightly, yet a sense of self-doubt lingered in Jack's mind. Was he genuinely shifting their perspective, or merely buying time? Tom's skeptical demeanor hadn't shifted. Let's say we do entertain this approach. What's to stop others from replicating our model? We could become just another organization chasing after fleeting accolades. Jack felt a rush of frustration, but inhaled deeply, centering himself. This was the crux of leadership, the struggle against uncertainty. Tom, if we lead with authenticity, our model becomes inseparable from who we are as an organization. Competition will always exist, but our values will serve as our compass. As long as we maintain integrity, we will inspire loyalty that can't be easily replicated. Deep inside, Jack knew this was more than a pitch. It was a validation of his role as a leader. Each question challenged him to innovate and communicate his vision with unwavering clarity. The intensity was palpable, a living, breathing entity that echoed in the space around them. As he felt the shift within himself, a flicker of determination ignited. What lay ahead was not merely another proposal to win over the board, but an opportunity to carve out his niche in an uncharted territory. This was less about the innovation and more about the potential journey, a journey where he could define the path for himself, one that demanded both resilience and introspection. Clara cleared her throat, her gaze steady. I think we need substantial data to back this up before we move forward. Jack nodded, sensing the ground shifting beneath him. I can lead that effort.
Gathering preliminary data, we can validate every angle before committing fully. Yet doubt gnawed at him again. Could he truly handle this? The stakes were high, and failure could mean confronting a part of himself he'd long been hesitant to explore. As discussions resumed, Jack felt the clock ticking down in rhythm with his heartbeat. The conversations morphed into plans, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that this was merely a prelude. In that moment, he was met with a flash of realization. This was about more than a business proposal. It was a personal reinvention on the precipice of taking place. He had traversed the tightrope and begun to recognize the power of his voice, but could he sustain the newfound integrity he was starting to embrace? Behind every question lay layers of his identity waiting to unfurl. Finally, the meeting began to close, but questions lingered, fueling his mind. Could he navigate the landscape he was venturing toward, or would the shadows of doubt cloud his journey? And what would happen when the true weight of responsibility pressed down on him in the days to come? Jack's heart pounded in his chest as the meeting came to an end. The board members were intrigued, yet the tension lingered. He had articulated his vision of art therapy, weaving a narrative that captured both his professional goals and personal drive. But the most significant moment lay ahead, executing the program and solidifying his newfound confidence in the face of real challenges. In the days following the meeting, Jack transitioned from visionary to architect. He worked tirelessly, constructing the frameworks necessary to launch the pilot program. The discussions with the board, previously fraught with uncertainty, had transformed into collaborations filled with potential. His colleagues rallied around him, each one bringing their expertise and passion to the project. The shared goal of integrating art therapy into patient care ignited a sense of camaraderie he had not expected. Every day presented hurdles, from securing the necessary materials to navigating logistical nightmares. Jack embraced these challenges as opportunities for growth. He felt the tide of doubt receding, replaced by a clear vision of what he was building. The program wasn't just becoming a feather in his cap, it was a chance to rewrite the narrative of therapy itself. He and Sarah spent weekends refining their curriculum, exploring different art forms and therapeutic techniques.
They tested their ideas on willing peers, collecting feedback that only strengthened their resolve. Patient engagement soared. It became clear that the act of creation itself offered a salve for many, crafting connections among patients that traditional methods had struggled to achieve. Around this time, Jack experienced a profound shift within himself. The transformation that had begun in the rain-soaked street beside the mural was solidifying.
Each challenge was a brushstroke on the canvas of his journey. He was no longer a man defeated by fears of failure. He was a leader, an advocate, emerging as a voice for those who felt unheard. The once silent echoes of doubt turned into empowering affirmations of accomplishment. Weeks of painstaking preparation culminated in the launch day of the pilot program. Jack stood before a group of fellow professionals, his team ready to unveil their vision. The room buzzed, filled with a blend of skepticism and excitement. As he began his presentation, he felt the weight of every word lift him higher. Today, we don't just launch a program. We create a community where healing meets creativity. To his surprise, the board members who had once doubted the initiative were now nodding in encouragement, genuinely listening to the passion in his voice. The synergy that had been built up danced through the air. Feedback from initial sessions flowed in, highlighting emotional breakthroughs and increased patient engagement. Jack read through the comments, feeling a swell of pride wash over him. His vision had not only been accepted, but was flourishing beyond expectations. In that moment, he realized the true essence of his journey wasn't merely about pushing back against skepticism. It was about championing vulnerability and resilience. His confidence solidified, no longer anchored by fear. The program's success represented a groundbreaking shift in how mental health and creative expression could intertwine, bringing light into shadowed corners. A few weeks later, at a quarterly staff meeting, the administration honored the achievements of the pilot program. Jack stood among his colleagues, receiving accolades and recognition for the impact they had created together. "We set out to humanize treatment," he said before the crowd, his voice strong and unwavering. "And, in turn, we discovered the strength that resides in all of us." He glanced at Mia, sitting proudly in the front row, her eyes shining with admiration. At that moment, Jack wasn't just a single dad fighting for his family's stability. He was a catalyst for change. He had proven to himself and others that creativity and care could coexist harmoniously. His thoughts drifted back to that rainy day where he had stood helplessly beside Mia, trapped in worry. That man was a stranger now. Jack's journey culminated in a deep sense of accomplishment, not solely for the program's success, but for the man he had become, confident, vocal, and unafraid to advocate for what he believed in. He had taken a stand, flourished personally and professionally, and emerged with solid footing in both spheres of his life, as a dedicated father and a transformative leader. This was no longer just a program. It was a legacy of healing that would touch countless lives. Jack smiled, recognizing the significance of his journey, and the road ahead was just beginning.
Now, if you felt inspired by Jack's incredible story of transformation, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional adventures. Leave a like now to help feed the algorithm and spread these powerful stories of individual overcoming. Comment your reactions and theories about Jack's journey. Let's engage together. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to make a difference. This is the moment to show your support, and only true fans will understand its importance.